Couple announcements before we start. Number one, I want to tell you class date schedule. My bad. I said that our exam is this Thursday. It's actually next Tuesday. So sorry about that. Like I said, thank you for your patience. So we're going to do a review day Thursday to make sure, if you guys have any questions and just to refresh any material that we've already covered, because all this exam will be is over strength. So the exam is not this Thursday, it will be next Tuesday. So just wanted to clear that up. And then also to let you know, as far, like I said, with the rigidness, as far as flexibility and all that, any late assignment that you haven't turned in, it needs to be turned in by April 15th. If you don't turn in by then, you get a 0, no partial credit, we're moving on. Because I don't want us to be swamped at the end of the semester trying to get your grades so we can tell you if you need to take the exam or not. I don't want us to be swamped that week doing this. So I feel like I've been pretty lenient with everybody. So unless, obviously if something comes up between a time and then you miss, and then you've missed after whatever, if you've communicated with me, that's fine. But April 15th, last call, make sure you turn in everything that you may have missed for partial credit. Or if you have an excused absent, then of course, full credit. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay, as you all know, Essay 3 is due Thursday. So make sure you get that in. If you have any questions on that, reach out to Aaron or I. And that's pretty much all the announcements I have right now for the beginning. Are there any questions on the dates that we need? Exam will be next Tuesday. Review day is this Thursday. And your Essay 3 is due this Thursday. Yes?
For the Temple Grandin worksheet, I was just going to turn it in class, but it says it's missing on mine. Is that okay?
No, so when you come to class and you turn something into me personally, I will update your grade in there. Okay. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to submit both. Okay. Just bring it to class and I'll update it. And that goes for any assignment that I have for you all. Any other questions? Okay. So let's talk about Temple Grandin. You guys obviously watched the film. Any big takeaways? I know we were talking about it a little bit before class, but any big takeaways from the film? Like, who is Temple Grandin first? Someone share. Who is Temple Grandin?
It's like really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Just take the thing rather than put them to work.
Mm-hmm. And what was she diagnosed with that allowed her to have that gift? Autism. She was autistic and seemed to see and think and process things differently.
It's almost like at a faster pace than anybody.
For sure.
For me, it would be extremely probably impossible to do that.
Yes, it's like she would see something and then conceptualize it so quickly.
Yeah.
For sure. What else is interesting about Temple?
What did her mom and her keep saying, like, not or
different, not less.
different? Yeah.
Yeah. That was a really, 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 really good quote. So good.
She's pretty much the genius. Like everything she is interesting, pretty much.
Yeah. And what was the big thing, like one of the big things, she accomplished many things in her career, but what was one of the big things that we saw highlighted in her career, or highlighted in the film that she did in her career, that she accomplished?
Her innovation of the slaughterhouse industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How the cattle were loaded and just keeping them low stress, trying to minimize loss, and that was one of the big things she was able to communicate. When she could equate it to dollars and bottom line, that was when people started to listen. It wasn't so much about caring about the cows necessarily, like most business. It was about, okay, how do we improve this bottom line? How do we reduce loss, increase profit? That sort of thing. For those of you who went to the Temple Grandin talk online, any of y'all want to share any interesting things you heard her discuss on that? And that was like at the beginning of April, the little agriculture event. First of all, who all went in here? Okay. Okay, 3. Did y'all have anything that you thought was interesting that she discussed?
I mean, she discussed like a lot of things. Now, I think one of the interesting things about herself that she was talking about is whenever she used the how she like sees things in her mind, like she used the church steeple as an example.
Mm-hmm.
She's talking about how she just sees she sees like specific church steeples like that she's seen in other places. And then she said like most people would see just like a generalized church steeple, or that people that were more like they saw like words instead of like pictures. And they see like a specific church steeple.
Mm-hmm. Just the way she computed things, yeah. Anything else that stood out to y'all? I know she talked a whole lot about technology and innovative, research and science. I thought that was interesting because obviously what she did was incredibly innovative during her time, but just that she stayed so connected. Obviously she's a professor still. I mean, she's still very engaged in this community, but just her perspective on all those things. I even thought it was interesting when she talked about her Star Trek poster. I've never watched Star Trek, but I've definitely heard of it. And just she was just talking about why she had that in the back and how it was just a show back then that was very representative of different like cultures and diversity.
Talks about it.
Yeah. So, like we kind of mentioned before class started, I don't know for sure how involved she was in the production of that film, but it seemed to be some layers there that she mentioned, even when she talked about the scene with the guts on the windshield wiper. She talked about that during the talk. So,
She like repeats like how she was talking about how like she has everything, like she can pull up stuff like things that she's seen like 30 years ago and stuff like in her mind. She repeats so many things because the second essay I wrote it about her, and when you go and look it through different like talks or like you watch different YouTube videos, she will repeat the same thing like word for word how she repeated it. And
Wow.
an entire like 10-minute portion of a lecture. She'll repeat that thing exactly like she said it in 3 other videos. Or like when she referenced some stuff in her thing that she talked about, or like the talk with her, she repeated some things exactly how she repeats it in like YouTube videos.
Yeah, so it's like not the kind of person you want to get in an argument with because they'll probably remember everything you said and what they said pretty accurately.
Can you imagine remembering a picture of like every face you've ever met?
When she
Sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
The teacher like told her to read it, and she looked at it and said, "Okay, I read it."
What would college be like if you had that talent? I think college would be pretty easy for me. I had that. Well, for this class, if you have these sheets, the Clifton Streets reference guide, you can go ahead and pull those out and pull out your worksheet about Temple Grandin. And what we're going to do, we're going to spend this class talking a little bit more about her strengths. And then obviously when we talk about her strengths, it'll be like your worksheet. We're going to talk about examples from the film and get a little deeper into who she was and what she did. So everybody have their worksheets out. What we're going to do is that as a class, I want us to kind of decide what we think her strengths are, her top 5 strengths. Last week we went over pretty much every strength in here and discussed that. So we want to kind of see, based off of what we looked at her and all her behavior and all those things, what do we think her top 5 are? So what I want to do is I'll probably divvy you guys up. I'll split you right here. You guys can just kind of form a little circle. And I want you guys to talk about your worksheets, talk about the 5 strengths that you collectively, matter of fact, I'll break you up into smaller groups. So I'll break you guys up into you 3, and then you 4 here, and then you 3 here, and then you 3 here. So what, because I want each of you guys to be able to kind of talk about this. Hint, hint, you want to make sure you can talk about this and understand why the strength applies and what the strength is. It'd be good to know. So I want you guys to break off in your groups, talk about your worksheet, talk about the 5 strengths that you assigned to her and what scenes from the film and what that strength is. And then after that, I'll kind of check in with you and you guys will kind of collectively decide on some strengths, okay? So go ahead and break off into your groups. And I'll give you about 5 or 7 minutes to kind of talk. Each of you talk about your strengths. These are so heavy. You wouldn't think they're like as heavy as they are, but board. Here, I'm gonna sit y'all's board here. And this is y'all's board. I'll sit right here.
I can draw a big cat and a little person.
Oh, but you go for it.
I know, right? Mine definitely looks good.
Miss Brown,
Oh, yeah.
are we just writing like the flag that we have like chosen on the board?
Yes. Yeah, so once you guys, I'll go ahead and tell you. Okay, so once you all have had the opportunity to kind of discuss your strengths, you'll take your board and you guys will collectively decide on the 5 strengths you think that Temple had. So yeah, and then you guys, with the examples you have, you don't have to write this on the board, but when we discuss and go around know it, give the examples from the film and describe what that strength is. Okay? So your top 5 for Temple that you guys can agree upon as a group.
Barely read after like years of French.
I know. I used to love French. It was definitely like I thought it was such a shitty language.
I was so bad at it though.
I don't know. I don't know if I was good at it. I don't think I was ever good. I remember it just in high school. I was like, all my friends took Spanish, but I didn't take French.
I took it in high school and in college.
That's okay. That's cool too. I wish I had done that. I didn't take any language in college. That was.
It's because one of the majors I had to, and then I switched my majors and I stopped taking language classes.
Do you have another marker?
Oh no, I don't think so. I don't think I do, Megan. I can try to make it work. I might just have you use someone else's because I left. I was like, oh yeah, I have plenty of markers. Oh, try this one. I don't know. It's kind of scary. It's all looks big. Okay.
But I like learning languages, so I was like looking into like, oh, what language should I learn? And I was like, because there's like some languages that are like objectively hard. Like English speaker or something, but there's also like and it's kind of almost like learner. It's sort of this idea that like certain people's brains are wired differently, so like some languages will be easier for them to learn than others. They start with like English or whatever, so it's interesting. Like I started learning Korean, it was so much easier for me to learn than French is.
When did you start learning Korean?
Like a year ago or so. It was like my I'm bored, what am I gonna do thing. I watch a lot of K-dramas, so it's like maybe I'll get to like watch it on subtitles one day.
That would be awesome. I was trying to do that before we went to Chile last year, this time, and I was working on my Spanish.
Yeah.
And I was trying to watch TV shows, and then like some of the staff around here who speak Spanish, I was trying to work with them.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing is not being immersed in the language. Like I have no real goals for my, it's just having to have something to do. Because I know they think it's good to like stimulate your brain like that. So it's just like one of those things that I do for fun. I'm not trying to like seriously learn or anything.
Yeah.
Like not being immersed or whatever, having someone to consistently talk to in the language definitely makes it harder to learn the
It
language.
definitely is, because when we went to Chile, it was like, yeah, like you're in a different country and everybody speaks Spanish here.
And they don't
So-
speak like the Spanish you learn in school.
Yeah,
It's like the hard Spanish, like it's like how we don't speak English, like how they learn English in other countries. Like,
yeah, it was very different. It was so cool. It was so, like, I don't know, it's just such a unique experience. I've traveled abroad before. The country I went to was English speaking,
yeah.
so it wasn't really that much of a change as far as language. They had very thick accents, so because it was in Trinidad, so it was like, okay, like that island Caribbean kind of accent, but that was different. But like being there, and it was just really cool. I liked it, and it made me see like, okay, if I was here for 2 weeks, like if I was here for 2 years, I'd be able to speak Spanish. You know what I mean? Because you're surrounded by, you kind of sink or swim at some point to figure out what you need.
I really want to travel abroad, but I'm like this weird person that like doesn't want to go to Europe or anything like that. I like want to go to like hard places. But I feel like it's kind of cool though because you get to see like, I feel like it really makes you grow as like a traveler and also like languages and stuff, like going somewhere. Like if you really want to improve your language skills, going somewhere where they don't really speak English. It's like I have to do this in order to like do anything.
I think it's just making you immersed in something so different, cultural. Because it's like, you know, we're in America and we do have the opportunity like that from different backgrounds and cultures and countries. But when you get to go somewhere else, it's like, hello, like the world is going very differently in different places. And they're doing just fine, you know what I mean? Some of us, so it's like,
Ranked 1 to 5, or just the top 5?
I mean, I don't really know. But if you wanted to discuss, kind of when you present what you think her top one was, you can do that.
Yeah, I was really sad I never studied abroad in undergrad.
I wish I'd taken advantage of that. I just was so clueless. I didn't really like.
It was like money, and I also got married halfway through undergrad, and there's just so many things. And there's the one place, like the one trip I really wanted to go on, they stopped doing, and it was just sort of like, because there was, at UT, there was an animal industry tour in Japan that I really wanted to go on. Because I was like, oh, that's probably really cool, it's probably going to be a lot of work, because I know that they love like certain types of pork, and like, you know, the beef, and all that good stuff, so but they stopped doing it. The 1 year I would have like probably been able to go.
Right. I don't even think it was really on my radar. I'll give you guys 1 more minute to have your top 5 strips. Just 1 more minute. I think it was not even on my radar. Like, I sort of I remember hearing about it. I never just really considered it. I don't know why. I didn't take advantage of it. I think maybe it was some round up to like sports.
I had such a heavy, I did summer school every single year.
Yeah,
And
I
like
took
those
heavy
types of things, those types of things just kind of keep you from doing it. I guess I did too, because I really wanted to graduate 4 years. Because like UT does this whole thing where if you graduate 4 years, like you get like some money back or something like that. I don't know how it worked. I don't remember how.
So like the super.
I don't know if I even got my money back because I graduated during COVID and they ended up not giving me any refunds or anything. That's
Well, that might be worth calling. You know, I saw a student somewhere is suing a university for online fees, or not online fees, or some kind of fees because they were online, maybe campus fees that they couldn't utilize.
Yeah, they kept all my campus fees even though I didn't live on campus, and all of that. And it was one of those things where it was like, it wasn't even worth it, I guess, at that point. Or like UT, I don't know how it works here, they forced you to have a meal plan, even if you lived off campus. You had to have like, I don't know how it works here, to have like the flex box things, like, they forced you to, and they didn't refund it or anything. Or they only refunded half the people. And it's like, well, I'm not on campus, I can't use it, I want my money back.
Yeah, see, some of that stuff, I'm just like, come on. Like, come
And
on.
MTSU was always really good about it, because you could use their like flex money at like restaurants in Murfreesboro.
Oh, that's cool.
Actually, like, used it at like Papa John's.
See, that's a little more reasonable.
You couldn't do that. And it was like, can I just
Only on campus?
Yeah, it was like, can I just have my money back?
I know, right? Like, I'm not there enough to really be able to enjoy it. Okay, y'all. Let's talk about it. See, I'll take, can I borrow your marker? Because I think I'm going to try to write down all the ones each of you says, and then we'll see kind of what the class as a whole says. So let's mix it up. Let's start with y'all's skirt.
Alright. So we have analytical, activator, ideation, and initiator. And our number one was activator, and we discussed that she was an activator primarily because she was very interested in animal husbandry and put her like ideas to action, such as like making her feed machine and the cattle shoe.
And tell us what activator is again. Remind us.
So activators are talented and activated team can make things happen by turning thoughts into action. Once a decision is made, they want to act quickly.
Okay. Okay, so give us some more scenes from the other 4 that you guys decided. Just one scene per strength you decided.
Well, for ideation, like,
And tell us what, when you go through it, sorry guys, when you go through it, tell us what the strength is, because like I said, you guys want to be aware of that for the exam. So tell us what the strength is, and then tell us what scene from the movie that you guys felt really demonstrated that strength for a temple.
so for ideation, it's a people especially talented in the ideation team are fascinated by ideas that are able to find connections between seemingly disparate phenomena. So to me, one scene that stood out from the movie is when she got to her aunt and uncle's and she was messing with the gate and just sitting there, she just thought of a way to make it basically an automatic gate with the counterweight system and stuff like that. And just the way that she, obviously she pictured stuff in her mind and brought it to fruition. Like that.
Okay, so the analytical, I think, kind of goes with that. So the analytical, people who are especially talented in analytical teams search for reasons and causes. They have the ability to think about all the factors that might affect the situation. So this wasn't such a defined scene in the movie, but like the things that she's done for the cattle industry and like the practices that most of us that are in it have adopted because of her. Like, you can't come up with those things without being analytical about what it is you're thinking about. I mean, it's not just, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. It's more like, well, how does this work? How does this work? That's going to go here. Like, it kind of goes the same deal with the ideation.
For sure.
The next one we put was learn, and it says they have a great desire to learn and want to continuously improve. In particular, the process of learning rather than outcomes and experience them. So we saw in the movie that first she really was interested in school, and then she started studying sciences and stuff, and she continued on to get a master's degree. So I think that says a lot about what she's really wants to learn, and just comes really willing to keep up with her studies. Eventually she did get a doctorate degree, I believe, as well.
Yes.
And the last one is an achiever, and that's where they have a great deal of stamina and work hard. They take great satisfaction from being busy and productive. A scene that comes to mind is when she was at the sophomore, and it was a bunch of men, and they didn't like that. She was like, Lauren, trying to do business, and she like didn't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And she just kept doing it, so to make sure she could achieve her goals.
Certainly had stamina to keep going through all that for sure. Very good. Okay. And we'll do your group first. And obviously, if they've picked a strength that you guys have, you don't have to read the definition again. Just give us a scene from the movie that you all thought demonstrated it. So only if it's a new one we haven't talked about, then I want you to read it.
So the five that we say are strategic, analytical, intellection, empathy, and purpose. So strategic and okay. For strategic people, especially talented in the strategic theme, create alternative ways to proceed. Faced with any given scenario, they can quickly spot the relevant patterns and issues. So for strategic, the example we kind of thought of was the gate one as well. She was able to just like automatically see that there was a problem. Like, oh, I have to get out every single time I pull up and open the gate. Let me just, so I don't have to get out of the car.
Right.
So that was the example we had for that one. Intellection.
And you can just give us an example if you have an example from analytical that you thought stood out.
I just kind of like the spins, like when she got to her aunt, and her was like,
Yeah.
or her aunt was like, they like sort those out or whatever. She's like, I don't get that. There's like obviously a difference. So she
Right.
just kind of like, just throughout the whole thing, she analyzed literally like everything.
Yes. Yes, I still have a hard time telling the difference between like silverware. In the same way she was just able to quickly pick up on that. So yeah, very good.
For intellection, people especially talented in the intellection theme are characterized by their intellectual activity. They are introspective and appreciate intellectual discussions. So for that one, what if I put the case that, or like the study that she did with like the squeeze machine? Like she figured out a way. She was like, what if I did a case study on this? Like, let me see how this affects other people as well. An idea of not only how to keep the squeeze machine, but also like she was just curious if it was just her that it was affecting, or if it was affecting everybody.
Right. Right.
And then empathy, people especially talented in the empathy theme can sense the feelings of other people by imagining themselves in others' lives or others' situations. So this one I kind of just say, well, everyone's just an example, but obviously like the first one that stood out to me was like the animals, like not only is she empathetic towards humans, but like she can be empathetic towards animals and like understand their possible thoughts and feelings as well in a way that a lot of other people probably can't. And then during her science teacher's funeral, like that, I feel like that was one of the first times that we really saw her like really like lean into those like emotions that like she obviously has, but like maybe hasn't shown before when she gave him like the gold pin, her gold cattle pin. And then learner. People are especially talented in the learning team have a great desire to learn and want to continuously improve, in particular, the process of learning rather than the outcome expected. Well, I feel like kind of like the example like from the beginning, like she learns about like her own emotions, I guess kind of like through the pictures. Because she was like, well, obviously I'm happy in that one, you know, and then kind of like more specific words to describe that. And then like she just kind of like is always like willing to learn or just I don't know.
Right. Even like when she did that that one scene when she had to basically create her own plans, like an engineer, like took what she needed to do to learn how to do that, which is insane. Kind of makes me think of the age we're living in now, to where you really can almost learn anything. You have YouTube and Google. I mean, I couldn't even imagine my life without it. Like, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's not great, but you can really figure out some stuff pretty quickly with it. Very good. Thank y'all. We'll see y'all. It is heavier than you think.
So, achiever, analytical, strategic, learner, and empathy.
You said, which one did I miss? Learner, I think. Did I get that? Oh gosh. So, but you guys had learner too, right? Both of you groups had learner. Okay, so we're at 3 with learner, and I think I have. So we have learner, achiever. I think I got all of them. Okay, go ahead.
The only one I guess I have to say, I mean,
Yeah, and y'all can just give examples since we've read through all those things.
yeah, the biggest one I have something for is like empathy. When her new roommate came in, like, and she was blind, she was able to realize, like, hey, you think this way and I think this way. And it's like, she's kind of like, you know, together we make a whole person, I guess, or like a whole brain. She's like,
Yeah.
and like, she's like, do you want me to move the squeeze sheet? She's like, no, just keep it there so I know where it is.
Right.
And so,
That's a
and,
good
like, I think
example.
she felt empathy because she wasn't so big on physical touch, but when she realized that she needed to be there for someone who could understand her in a different way, like, she was able to, like, guide her, you know.
For sure,
She was,
yeah.
like, hesitant at first to let her, like, grab on.
Right. That's a very interesting example.
She had good
Good.
examples for this one.
No pressure.
So for analytical, like she really looked at the different situations, such as like the room in the beginning that was like a little like must be perspective room, and like she took time to figure that out. And then she also with like the cattle and like with the dip vat and then the slaughterhouse, like she looked at it through like that, like the eyes of the cattle, and like saw what would freak them out and like what wouldn't, and she came up with a better solution to that problem, even though people were kind of trying to first she comes with that.
Yeah.
For strategic, she found a way to like keep her squeeze machine, and when she faced a new scenario, she's always like kind of had the idea a new door, a new opportunity, and then we said that what she argued, like she kind of like argued her way out of the F, like by providing like a better and more detailed explanation for like her work, and then she fought she fought really hard to find a way to keep researching at the feedlot. Like she fought the truck and like kind of exploding.
Right.
And
Right.
I love the rolling in the ground. I was like, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that was like.
Yeah, I think
For learner, I put that she found a way to build her own squeeze chute when she went to college.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically she was just learning the whole time, or analyzing it.
For
Like
sure.
everything, I think there was probably only like 4 or 5 scenes in the movie where she wasn't like learning something or.
True.
I think the way I kind of saw learner is the way she learns is different, because like, well, maybe it's not so much different, but we see it really well in the movie because once she finds something new and she explores something new, she puts a label to it and she's comfortable with it. But like the time she walked into her room and the sign had fallen off the door, like she had learned that space and then put a label to it, and so she was comfortable with it. But after that, like it was something different, and she wasn't comfortable relearning it because she was just like shy about it. So
With each transition, like in the movie, with each transition of like her age or like stage in her life, the opening of a door.
Yes. Yes. That was very symbolic through the movie, is just going through doors. You know, like you said, when she was going up the stairwell, kind of after graduation.
That quote is like, so like every time you open a new door, it's
Mm-hmm.
something you have to do.
Yeah. Even when she was at that grocery store
Yeah,
too.
because when she goes to the grocery store, that's when she needs the lady to go.
Yep.
To be able to get into the slaughterhouse.
Definitely. Definitely. Were you about to say something?
this is my door, it opens another world.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That was definitely a really kind of intertwined theme throughout the film.
I find it really interesting the way she started relating things like it's almost like triggers and PTSD and stuff, like when you, like, when she saw something, she would relate it to something like the guillotine and the doors that went like this. Like, I found it interesting that she made that connection.
Yeah, that was interesting. Even like the literal connection she made. What was it when she had that? I just remember that scene in the movie, and she like saw, I guess, was it somebody being a chicken? Was it her aunt being a chicken when she was like,
When she said we wake up with them.
yeah, and she saw her like on the top of the house, and like she just like,
Or like animal husbandry.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Pictures of like literal.
Yeah, like you said, kind of like, that's an interesting comparison of that trigger when she hears something and then how she conceptualizes it, for sure.
Animal husbandry just made me laugh so much.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what are you doing? It's like, look at this. And she goes, oh yeah, I forget about that part. It's like, it's so funny.
Yes, there's definitely humor in there. Okay, great job. Give you guys the finale.
So we have analytical, and like our example was she goes to the facility on her hands and knees to see exactly what the cattle see, and then she studies their moves, so she needed like a reason and a cause for everything.
For Beaver, she basically like the cattle shit was like a way that she could learn and watch her try and like build one on her own, and she would like achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And even to add on to Cheever, like when they destroyed like her whole setup, like with the tin sheet and everything, like she didn't let that destroy her, so like she made them even better than what they were. And then I had strategic and like she built her own food machine. Like I don't think any of us could do that with a normal.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. While still being a student. I mean, she was still a student. You know what I mean? Like, this wasn't her full-time thing, just doing that. So, yeah.
We had significance, and I think that's amazing. So
Yeah.
people talented in the significance and they want to make an impact. And so we used her quote. She said, "We raised them for us. That means we owe them some respect."
Yeah.
And the second one, I became aware of just how precious life was. So almost like she wanted to like make an impact for the cows, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, she was like very passionate about that. It was all about like how you treat them. She wanted them to like be calm and all that.
Yeah.
And then the last focus, I think that's new also.
It is.
People talented in the focus thing can take a direction, follow through, and make the corrections necessary. So she made a vision for herself, like the cattle sheep she saw, and she had to like make changes to it. Like she wanted it to squeeze like harder or tighter. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But I remember her like telling her aunt like more or something.
Right, right.
She did a study on her personal sheep that she made, but she wanted to see if it like was the same for everyone else or how it was different and stuff like that.
Yes. Very interesting. So, as you can kind of see from all the things we've shared, there's some overlap certainly in what you all see as her strengths, but there's some differences there. But kind of like what we talked about last week is remembering that when we said two people can have the same strength and it be demonstrated differently within, sometimes when we're looking at the strengths within someone, we can sometimes see them demonstrated differently. Hence the reason why you guys do see different scenes that really illuminate these strengths within her. So you want to make sure that you can articulate, kind of like we just did in class, what the strength is that you think Temple had, like being able to describe what that strength is, and then also being able to give examples from the film and what showed that that was her actual strength. So just be sure that you're familiar with these, and be sure you're familiar with them in the language that it gives. So not necessarily the word that you think, oh, okay, I know what that means, and then you try to kind of give your own definition. Be very specific in how each of these are designed to be demonstrated. So Temple never took this test, but she did come up with 5 strengths that she thought were her actual strengths, like if she were to ever taken this test. And this was a study done by Dr. Pennyweeks, Dr. Klein, and I think there was one other author on there. might have been someone else who was through AGLE, and probably I can't remember her name at the moment. It's like right on the tip of my brain, but they worked on a study that kind of talked through some of these things in class. So based on some things, Temple felt achiever was one of her strengths, focus was one of her strengths, input, intellection, and responsibility. So based on what the class saw as top, we'll just go from, so see how much overlap we see in what Temple thought. So analytical was our top one that as a class we thought that Temple had. Everybody, I think, put that in theirs. And then we saw achiever, which achiever was one of hers, so she could see some relation in why achiever would be a strength of hers. And then we saw learner. Most of you all thought learner was one. Strategic. Surprised that she didn't think that one too. Strategic. And then empathy, which was an interesting one. I don't think I've had a class that picked empathy as her strength, but I thought y'all gave some clever examples as to how you saw this in her. So anybody want to read what input and responsibility is? First, input. Who wants to read that?
People expressing confidence and ability have a good need to collect and archive. They may collect information, ideas, history, or information.
Okay, can y'all think of anything you saw in her behavior throughout the film that demonstrated that strength, input?
She was conducting like her study. She like collected too much information, and she was almost frustrated with getting all this background information and data to put together. So like if she did it was too much, and she was like shorting it down.
Yeah, collecting information overload. Any other examples?
When they were at the stockyard, she's like, well, they're mooing, and they're all like, yeah, and she's like, well, that means this, and they're like, what? And she kept like telling them like, hey, this means something. They're going in circles, and they're like, yeah. Like, the sexism in this just
it definitely was illuminated her experience as a woman, like, you know, and I think culturally we can see there's some differences in, you know, how women are treated in the agriculture industry. I don't think that's a secret. I can't say from my personal experience a lot of things, especially in production ag, because I haven't really been involved in production ag in that regard. But I mean, I've definitely dealt with things like that in the workplace, and not from everybody. I've had people that respected me as a professional. So it's definitely not, I think maybe I'm blessed. I haven't had just a pattern of reoccurring things, but also I'm not 20, 30 years in the game either.
it's definitely changed from then, but
Yeah.
I just watched it and I was like, yeah, I could punch that guy in the face.
Yeah, and you know, and it's definitely discussions that need to be had, you know, because even the next film that we'll watch talks about women's suffrage and talks about Alice Paul and really gets into that as far as just, you know, women trying to fight for equality in some regard. But, you know, I think it's really walking in the perspective of the other person, understanding like, okay, there are some clear problems that Temple went through that were based off of A, B, C, and D. And gender was definitely one of them. You know, going in there and not feeling like I need to dress like a man so they'll like let me through the gates. That's a clear problem. You shouldn't feel like you need to do that in order to be respected, especially considering the amount of knowledge that she brought to the table. So I think, you know, issues like that when it comes to people not being treated as, you know, competent individuals based on fill in the blank. I think it is a problem, and I think that's something that people do need to talk about and figure out. Because in my mind, and maybe it's the strategic in me, but it's like, okay, this is a problem, we can talk about it, but what are we going to do about it to get rid of the underlying issue? Like, who are we going to get rid of? That we don't need to have this talk anymore. Because I don't want to be having the same, I do not want to be talking about the same issues in 20 years. Like, I just don't. Like, that's crazy to me. I'd rather go buy an island somewhere and go live there and then deal with fighting with the same issues. So I think when you do notice things like that, and if it does trigger you for whatever reason to be like, this is a problem, I challenge you to think, what can I do? Because, yeah, okay, maybe it's better than when she was going through it, but there's still ladies that have, everybody has their own, cross to bear. So that might not be everybody's goal is to try to make the workspace better for women. But if that's something that kind of grinds your gears, then it's like, what can you do? Even big or small, what can you do moving forward to try to make the industry a little bit better? Like, would it be mentoring a young lady, as an ag teacher? Would that be it? Would it be being involved in women in ag groups? Would it be working in policy? Like, I really challenge you all, if you see an issue that you don't like, think about how can I try to make the space a little better for what kind of aggravates me, big or small. So I know it's kind of a tangent, but I think it was worth talking about, bringing it up, because it definitely was something that was in the film. And like I said, the next unit we'll talk a lot more about it. But one other example too I wanted to give for input was how she collected those cows, those gold cows. She kind of kept collecting those, and those became very important to her. So that's another example. Last one, responsibility. Someone read what you thought, or read what it actually was.
People, especially talented in responsibility, begin to take psychological ownership of what they would say they would do. They're committed to stable values such as responsibility.
Anybody think of an example?
Yeah, that was, she felt like it was her responsibility to help the cattle. She said, she was like, if she could think like they can and experience that she should help them.
Absolutely. Even too, remember when she built, designed that chute, everything was going good, and then she went there the next day, and they had just totally wrecked and jacked up everything that she did, and all those cattle, cows had died because of it. And
they tried to blame her, and she
yeah.
it worked. It was just she messed it up.
Right. And the ownership she had on what I created, I know works. I know that works. Y'all don't listen.
Or whenever they were questioning her about it, whenever she said the blueprints, you don't even know if it's gonna work. She's like, I do know, I ran it through my mind 1,000 times.
Right. Definitely. So the big goal here, like I said, is to be able to describe these strengths and apply it to Temple, and be able to give solid examples of what it means. Get familiar with the definitions.
Will we need to know what she thinks?
No. Just wanted to share kind of what she thought and see what, based on the class, where we were. And most of them, because your group thought focus, nobody else thought focus, and she kind of agreed with that. But as long as you can explain what the strength is and give legit examples for why that is her strength, you'll be fine. I'm not looking for the top 5 of the class. I'm not looking for her top 5, none of that. Just what you can do. Okay? Any other questions about Temple and strengths that we've covered thus far today? Okay. So I'll give you some quick reminders before we dismiss. One, again, too, if there is something, quick sidebars, something you're passionate about that you want to change, let me know. I'm really into, changing stuff and making things better. So if there's anything I can ever do to help, even if it's not my thing, I could probably connect you to someone else that it is their thing, or if I don't have the resources. So definitely want to help in that regard to be game changers. We're going to review part 1 and 2 on Thursday. I'll give you a study guide for what the exam is going to be over. And then you'll want to make sure, again, you complete your essay. It's due Thursday. And study. So any questions or anything? You guys, when is the exam? Next Tuesday. Okay, great. When's your essay due? Thursday. Perfect. Okay. Yes, turn in your Temple Grandin worksheet and turn in the worksheet I passed out last week too. Bring both of those up. And you can erase your board. Here goes the eraser. And if you guys don't mind hanging them up on those 2 empty things, that'd be great.
This one I found what it measures in the book, but I didn't find why. But is it because they give you